Today's scripture is from Psalm 104, selected verses. Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, you are very great. You are clothed with honor and majesty, wrapped in light as with a garment. You stretch out the heavens like a tent. You set the beams of your chambers on the waters. You make the clouds your chariot. You ride on the wings of the wind. You make the wind your messengers, fire and flame your ministers. You set the earth on its foundation so that it shall never be shaken. You make springs gush forth in the valleys. They flow between the hills, giving drink to every wild animal. By the streams, the birds of the air have their habitation. They sing among the branches. From your lofty abode, you water the mountains. The earth is satisfied with the fruit of your work. You cause the grass to grow for the cattle and plants for people to cultivate, to bring forth food from the earth and wine to gladden the human heart, oil to make the face shine, and the bread to strengthen the human heart. You've made the moon to mark the seasons. The sun knows its time for setting. You make darkness, and it is night, when all the animals of the forest come creeping out. The young lions roar for their prey, seeking their food from God. When the sun rises, they withdraw, and they lie down in their dens. People go out to their work and to their labor until the evening. O Lord, manifold are your works. In wisdom you've made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. May the glory of the Lord endure forever. May the Lord rejoice in his works. I will sing to the Lord as long as I live. I will sing praise to him, to my God, while I have being.
The New York Times had an interesting feature the other day on the subject of attention. They invited the reader to view a digital version of the painting Nocturne, Blue and Silver by the American painter James McNeill Whistler. The task was to look at the image and nothing else for 10 minutes. There was a little I quit button at the bottom in case the participant just couldn't do 10 minutes. A timer also appeared every 2 minutes to tell the participant how much time was left in the grueling 10 minutes. About 25% of the people completed the 10 minutes, and about 25% of the people watched it less than a minute. The rest of the viewers were scattered throughout the time. And I'm happy to report that I was able to view the full 10 minutes. The exercise was interesting, though. In the painting, it seemed to be late dusk. There are smokestacks and a few buildings hovering in the distance over a waterfront. There are specks of light on the horizon and other really indefinable structures. And there is this light that reflects on the water, on the body of water. And I will tell you, simply paying attention improved my appreciation for the subtleties of the painting that I would have otherwise missed. And the article says it's quite possible that this is the longest period you've spent looking at one single thing in quite a while. Can anybody say they've spent 10 minutes looking at one thing? And they said the art of focusing is both possible and valuable, no matter how pointless it may seem. And the exercise was based on an assignment that Jennifer Roberts, an art history professor at Harvard, gives to her students. She asks them to go to a museum, pick one work of art, and look at the piece for 3 hours. We're not going to do that today. But the students do acknowledge that they initially did not see everything we're seeing. They find that by being a little bored and a little outside their comfort zone, they begin to see something new, and something more new, and something more new, and something interesting. You know, there's a statistic that reports that the typical office worker spends an average of less than a minute at a time on any one screen. And think about ourselves, our kind of scrolling and clicking and changing screens. And the author of the study surmises that when you're used to a manic social media feed, it's hard to pay attention to content that doesn't change. It's hard to pay attention to content that doesn't change. One of the aspects of a spiritual and faith perspective is that we are invited, actually required, beckoned, encouraged to see, to think, to feel, to interact with life on a deeper level. And by engaging in life in such a way, we have a deeper connection to God, and our life takes on more interest and meaning. Now, it's not easy to do. We're not, and especially in this time of internet and social media. It takes intention, it takes focus, but it's worth doing. When was the last time you really focused on your faith, your inner life, your spiritual perspective? Have you paid attention lately to the quality, the time you spend focusing on your relationship to the sacred, to God, to spiritual development? But a new world, a deeper world, a more interesting world can open up if we simply pay attention, quiet ourselves, listen. And in my 10-minute experience of the Whistler painting, Nocturne now has taken on deeper meaning to me. I will remember the evening scene, the specks of light in the darkness, his interesting signature, the mood, the mystery. Mary Oliver wrote a poem called Sometimes. And there's one short, simple stanza that stands out, and it says this: instructions for living a life. Here you go. Take notes. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. We could say these are instructions for living a life, but they're also instructions for feeding our souls, for deepening our faith, for expanding our relatedness to God and our fellow human beings. Her poem suggests that as we pay attention, we might also be astonished by the beauty and miracle of God's creation. But what we pay attention to matters. Giving your rapt attention to America's Got Talent probably will not elicit a deeper connection to God, to awe, to wonder. Although I will say, watching the Olympians perform should elicit astonishment in all of us, right? For most of us, however, it's a human tendency to look and experience life through a narrow scope. And the reality is there's so much more. In Mary Oliver's life, she, just a couple years before her death, she disclosed to an interviewer that she had been abused at the hands of her father. She did not go into details, but she said this: She was born into a very dark and broken house. She could not stand to be in buildings, houses, so she spent most of her time out in nature. But nature and poetry not only gave her an escape from tormented memories and experience, but it brought her into a whole new horizon, a living, thriving, expansive world, so much bigger than she could have ever imagined. And she gave her attention to nature, and it brought her into an experience, no matter what her background, it brought her into an experience of astonishment, of wonder, of beauty, of God. And then she took that and expressed it in her poetry and in her essays, giving us a larger lens in which to view and experience the world. Giving our attention to our inner world, our spiritual perspective, the world around us has the potential to transform and expand our horizons. It has the potential to reveal to us who we are. It gives us a broader identity, and it tells us that there is more possible in the world. Dasher Keltner wrote a book called Awe, The New Science of Everyday Wonder and How It Can Transform Your Life. He says wonder and the mental state of openness, questioning, curiosity, embracing mystery arises out of an experience of awe. In our studies, he says people who find more everyday awe show evidence of living with wonder. They are more open to new ideas, to what is unknown, to what language can't describe, to the absurd, to seeking new knowledge. And he says it should not surprise us that people who feel even 5 minutes of a day of awe are more curious about art, music, poetry, new scientific discoveries, philosophy, and questions about life and death. And he says, we realize our interdependence and we are connected to the expansive and vast forces of the universe. And the question you might ask yourself is there anything that brings you into a state of awe? Just watching an ant on a sidewalk might do it. And if you aren't, how come? And if you do have a sense of wonder and astonishment, is it an aspect of your daily life? It could be a daily devotional. In the psalm that Judy read this morning, we hear of the wonderful testament of what could be described as an astonishment of what God has created. And the Psalms were written over a time frame of about 1,000 years. And according to Wikipedia, they were compiled and edited in their present form in the 5th century BC. That's a long time ago. And then there are also several types of psalms. There are hymns, there are laments, there are psalms of praise. And minister and Christian writer Leonard van der Zee writes that Psalm 104 is a hymn to the Creator who can be recognized in the beauty and grandeur of creation. And he says one of the effects of modernity is that the world is no longer a divinely enchanted place. Isn't that the truth? Instead, we live in a flatland where every natural phenomenon has an immediate cause and effect. It's all scientifically and empirically explainable, and the mystery is gone. In this psalm, though, the psalmist is completely enwrapped with God's creation. He has paid attention. He has imagination and wonder. He is astonished, and he tells about it. You stretch out the heavens like a tent. What an image. You set the beams of your chambers on the waters. You make the clouds your chariot. You ride on the wings of the wind. You make the wind your messengers. And here we are, July 28, 2024, being reminded by that amazing testament, being awakened once again. We are given instructions for living a life, for paying attention, how to be astonished, and how to tell about it. So, just briefly, as a change of pace, I thought it might be fun to practice. Don't worry, it won't be 10 minutes. It won't be 3 hours. We won't keep you here all day. But I want you to take your bulletin. And just look at it. Just gaze at it for a minute. The front of the bulletin. And just see what you see. Maybe the colors, maybe the dynamics. Maybe there's meaning in it. This is a famous wave. Maybe you've seen it. It shows up a lot on the internet by an amazing artist, a Japanese artist called Hokusai. What do you think is going to happen? What's your impression with do you see the people in the boats? There are 3 boats. And you wonder, there's human beings in there, but there's also the power of nature. One writer says, the tip of the waves are like claws ready to crash down onto the rocky surface. The dark sky near the horizon indicates that it's early morning. In the print, the crew is seen wearing work apparel named samu, which are worn in autumn or spring. So the setting would be autumn or spring. And between the ferocious waves and the fragile crew stood Mount Fuji, disguised as one of the waves in the same hue of blue. Do you see Mount Fuji in there? There's snow on it. And if you even step back, the author, this particular analyst, notices that there's a yin and yang symbol between the wave and the background of the sky. But this is just a brief little session on how, and if you just kept looking at it, I suspect you would see more and more and more. Hokusai himself started drawing when he was 6 years old. And he was very attuned to nature. And in his late 70s, he is reported as saying, "At 73, I began to grasp the structures of birds and beasts, insects and fish, and the way plants grow. If I go on, I will surely understand them still better by the time I am 86. So that by 90, I will have penetrated to their essential nature. At 100, I may well have a positively divine understanding of them. And the point is, he never quit seeing or looking or paying attention or being astonished. And for him, he told about it in his paintings and his drawings. That's actually a woodcut, the one you see on your bulletin, which was very common in his years. And so I want to close us this morning with this is a poem written by Roger Keyes, but it's in honor of Hokusai. And it's our meditation group, every once in a while, I'll bring this poem out as a way to have us centered. But I want to invite you to just listen, to center yourself, to allow whatever image comes to you, to let it go. If your mind wanders, that's okay. It doesn't matter. But just be present. Come back to the words. If there's a phrase or an image that sticks with you, perhaps hold on to that. And this is just a portion of it. Hokusai says, look carefully. He says, pay attention. Notice. He says, keep looking. Stay curious. He says, there is no end to seeing. He says, look forward to getting old. He says, keep changing. You just get more who you really are. He says, get stuck. Accept it. Repeat yourself as long as it's interesting. He says, keep doing what you love. He says, keep praying. He says, every one of us is a child. Every one of us is ancient. Every one of us has a body. He says every one of us is frightened. He says every one of us has to find a way to live with fear. He says everything is alive. Shells, buildings, people, fish, mountains, trees. Wood is alive. Water is alive. Everything has its own life. Everything lives inside of us. It doesn't matter if you saw wood or catch fish. It doesn't matter if you sit at home and stare at the ants on your veranda. It matters that you care. It matters that you feel. It matters that you notice. It matters that life lives through you. He says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Look, feel. Let life take you by the hand. Let life live through you. This day, tomorrow, maybe this week, take some time to pay attention, to be astonished, and then tell about it. Amen.